Hello, 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 and welcome.
Riley.
Picked up again by McDavid, straight up the middle, McDavid in, scores! What a goal! Tony Subban scores! Crosby scores! Sidney Crosby, the golden goal! He did it! The greatest goal scorer in National Hockey League history is Wayne Gretzky! And Hemsky's loose! Hemsky, he scores! Can you believe what we just saw? In comes Tavares. Walks in, Wade scores! Tavares again! Canada's back in it! 3, 2, 1! Series over!
Welcome back to the third episode of the One-Timers Podasct. Cam and Jules, just finishing off the second week of the NHL season. Jules, what have you liked so far?
Well, I've liked a blockbuster trade in the second week of the season. Not too often you see two guys who are second and third overall get dealt for each other, especially when they're so young. So I want to talk about that right away. I want to jump into Pierre-Luc Dubois for Patrik Laine. Obviously, there's Jack Roslovic and a third-round pick involved. I just want your initial reaction. Who do you think won? What's your thoughts?
Columbus Blue Jackets, absolutely. I haven't seen anyone come out and say that they Winnipeg Jets have won. I think Laine might have needed this, and a lot of people are kind of questioning how he's going to do with Torts. But I mean, I think he's someone that really cares, has always really cared about playing, and even it goes to show when he wanted his trade in Winnipeg, like it didn't let him affect anything on the ice. Paul Maurice openly said that. So if he can come down to Columbus and get something going and maybe get opposites attract sometimes, maybe they can find something with Torts. Dubois scares me on the other end. I think that for a 22-year-old to act the way that he did, and I think we'll definitely get to that with not telling Torts or Kekalainen about the trade, that you don't do that as a 30-year-old after you won 2 cups. Like, you definitely don't do it as a 22-year-old. So that's my initial reaction. We'll dive in a little deeper, I think, but
Yeah, I'm with you on Columbus winning the deal. I think they got the better player. I think Patrik Laine is an elite scorer. I know everybody is valuing Pierre-Luc Dubois on the center position, but to me, it's a difference of 30 points and probably, 10, 15 goals a year, maybe 20, 30 goals a year difference between the two guys. I think Laine is a much better scorer, an offensive player. Yeah, Dubois is going to go great there. I still think he's a second line center there. I think Mark Scheifele's better. So I think he's going to be the greatest second line center. But Patrik Laine has that innate ability to score. Not many guys do have that ability, and he's fantastic at it. Jumping in with the Tortorella. I think Tortorella is going to either put Patrik Laine in line or he's going to appreciate him for his skill set. If I look back and I think, okay, Artemi Panarin is a floater who does not battle and he just does his thing offensively. And John Tortorella found a way to make Artemi Panarin fit in that system and succeed and have some amazing seasons there. He was fantastic there. And I think that they will do a similar thing with Patrik Laine. I think that they'll find a way to incorporate him into their system. Obviously, everybody knows he's not the most defensively gifted player. I think Tortorella knows that. I think he expects that. So I don't think he's going to expect Laine to show up day one and all of a sudden win a Selke. All right. He's not going to do that. But what he might do when he shows up is be able to have a 40-goal season. Obviously, prorated over 82. But I think it's going to work. My only thing with the deal is I raised a cap issue. I think that the only way you can look at it as a Winnipeg win is cap related stuff. They got rid of Roslovic, who they had to sign. Columbus signs him. Laine was making more money. I know they did a little bit of exchange and retention so that they would be even, $5 million a piece. But the issue is that Laine is up after this year, and I think Laine is going to want money. And Pierre-Luc Dubois is up not for another year. Also, he's going to want money, but with Scheifele already there, I don't think he can demand more than Scheifele, or at least not that much more. And I think Laine is going to look at it and say, hey, you offered Artemi Panarin 13 mil to stay in Columbus, and you offered Mitch Marner $13 million to come to Columbus. I want at least 10 or 11. And that's the only way I see Winnipeg winning this deal.
If he produces the way I think, can produce, Laine, then I think he's kind of in that ballpark anyway. And especially if Torts is able to shape his game a little bit round, like he's still so young. I don't think he's ever going to win a Selke, like you said. He's not going to turn into a defensive kind of guy, but if he can shape his game to a little bit defensively responsible, somewhere we can at least not score goals in his own net, like he did in Winnipeg, then you can. I think $10 million or at least like 9 is not out of the question. I think you're crazy if you think Dubois is staying in Winnipeg. I think he wants to be in a big market. Well, he's already said he wants to be in a big market, and he's going to really, really have to have a strong start and a strong season, because I like the guy a lot coming in, and we talked over the summer and last year, highly praised him and thought he was like just stuck in Columbus, but could be much, much better. But the moves that he made and like just the immaturity of that, I think if he goes there and has a slow start, we'll get to the North Division and the way that's shaping right now. But to be on pretty high scoring Winnipeg team and potentially maybe have a slow start, having the other guys that he might think he's better than, right, passing him in the points and getting higher up, then I don't see it working out, and I don't see him wanting to stay. So that's why I don't think Winnipeg gets anything out of this deal other than a 3rd round pick.
See, I do agree with you to a certain extent. And I also think that could happen going the other way with Laine. I think he might want to play in a big market as a guy coming from overseas. Like Panarin wanted to play in New York. He wanted a big market stage. I think Laine could do the same thing in Columbus. My thoughts on pierre-luc Dubois going to Winnipeg is, yes, I think he wanted to go to a big market. And I think he still wants to go to a different market than Winnipeg. I think if he could have chose, he would have wanted to go to Montreal. I think he actually came out and said that would be his first choice. But the thing about it is that, first of all, his dad is the assistant coach for the Manitoba Moose, which is the AHL team for Winnipeg. So I'm sure if they were trading there and they thought he was going to leave, there would have been some discussion, be like, hey, okay, your dad works, for our organization. Does Pierre want to come here? Like, would he be fine with it? Would it be okay? Or is he going to demand a trade in a year? Because I think one of the big things of what happened with Dubois was that Kekalainen offered him an 8x8. So they offered pierre-luc Dubois in Columbus 8 years at $8 million. So the same as Duchesne got in Nashville. That's a mega contract, huge contract. And he said no to that. And he was like, I want out. So Kekalainen said, okay, if you sign a lower deal, $5 million, it makes you more tradable. So we're going to get you out of here. And I think that made him more tradable. But I also think that he's going to want money on the next one. And I don't know how many of those big market teams are going to have a bunch of money lying around on the next deal for him. And I think if his rights are still in, he'll still be an RFA in Winnipeg. I think if he goes in and they do well in the North Division, I think he sticks around. I think that he could be happy there. Obviously, like we said, he wants to be a number one guy. Well, guess what? Go earn your spot as number one guy. Outplay a guy like Mark Scheifele. Wouldn't that be a fantastic thing to do?
Yeah, well, and that's very possible. But I think the big thing with him where he really wants to get paid, and like you just said, he has to prove he deserves to get paid that big money, because you look at a guy that last year led his team in points. I think he played 70 games last year, right? Had 49 points. Right. So you led your team in points. Your team doesn't get a lot. You don't score a lot. Very defensive team. But if you go out this year and you don't have a lot of points and you don't really show yourself as a overly productive person, you're not going to get. How are you gonna warrant $10 million after coming off of back-to-back seasons without a lot of points? You can't blame it on the team now, because Winnipeg, their top two lines like scores on command regularly. So it's interesting. Where time's going to tell. I think very, very fitting. We talked about this with quarantine, him having to come up here and missing 14 days since 7 games. I just consider that a 7-game suspension. So the suspension will fit. Trudeau's gonna hand out the suspension since Bettman can't.
See, I'm going to come at it from the other side. I'm going to play devil's advocate here of why he was so upset. So I agree with you. The way he acted was very childish. You have to try harder than that. Yeah, you're playing in a place you don't want to play. Yeah, lots of people have asked for trades. If you look at the other side, Laine had asked for a trade, but guess what? He went out in the first game. He had 3 points. He had 2 goals. He got clipped. He was bleeding. He was still playing. He was chirping guys, going after guys. Like, he was still a professional. Lots of guys asked for trades, and they're like, okay, we'll make it happen in time. I think what happened with Dubois was that he got the 8x8 million offer. You know, you have $64 million on the table. You say no to that. And he says no to that because he's like, I want a trade. So they say, okay, you sign a 2-year, $5 million. So you're going from a $64 million contract to a $10 million contract. And he signs that to make himself more tradable. And then the season comes around, it starts, and he isn't traded. I think he expected in his mind, okay, you guys said if I sign this deal, it's lower. It makes me easier to trade. I'm going to sign it. I request a trade. I want out of here. So then he goes, and they're not trading him yet, and it's not happening. The season's starting. He's playing for less than what he believes he's worth, and the trade's not happening. He's like, I signed a lower contract so you could deal me. Why aren't you dealing me? I'm not saying the way he acted was right. I think it was completely wrong. I think he needed to work hard and show himself so that other teams would want him and would value him, because nobody values a guy that's acting like that. But at the same time, I do understand the frustration that he was feeling. I think that he expected the deal to get done sooner, and he wasn't happy with Kekalainen sitting there and listening to offers through half a season or all season. I think Dubois was hoping that this would have been done before the season started, and it kind of seeped into the season.
Yeah, that's very possible, and I agree with it. But my opinion on the matter is, at any age, you're lucky enough to be an NHL player. Any age, you could be a 40, you can be 20, you could be 18. When you all that stuff wanting to be out, wanting to get traded, that's all off ice issues. When it comes to on ice, when you go on the ice, right at the end of the day, unless you have no respect for your teammates either, you should try to play to win. You should try to always try your hardest when you're on the ice. And you watch clips from the last game that he played, where he played 355. It was a Sunday skate. He just wasn't invested in the game at all. Didn't care. And then you come out to find out that he didn't tell any teammates that he wanted, why he wanted to trade either. So maybe he just really didn't care about what was going on. But for me, I don't like that. You can want out as much as you want, or you can just say, I'm not going to play and I'm going to sit out. I'm going to leave. That's fine. Cause that way you're not hurting your team as much, because you're just saying I'm not a part of them anymore. But if you're going to go and you're going to go on the ice and then just float around and not try, you're just hurting every other teammate. Like, you're hurting your team chance to win. And it's other guys in the locker room who have nothing to do with an issue on why you want to get out, in all likelihood. So for a young guy to do that, who was talked about before, who was like a leader of their team and like a young guy coming up, I didn't like it at all. And I don't think there's a way of convincing me that it was good. Yeah.
So I want to move on from this topic, but I have one last thing I want to go on with Dubois, is that I just, like, Kekalainen came out, the GM of Columbus, and he said, we still don't know why he asked for a trade. Like, we don't know why, and nobody does. And I'm sure pierre-luc Dubois knows, and maybe his family knows, but nobody else knows. But what I don't understand was, it didn't seem like last year he wanted out of there. Like, this is something that happened recently. Something happened, because I found out that he just purchased in August. So in August, he purchased a condo in downtown Columbus for $1 million. So in August, during the bubble, he was invested in the city of Columbus. He purchased like a home, a residence to live in there. And all of a sudden, we're talking 6 months later, he's refusing to play for them. He's acting like a baby on the ice and wants out. I'm just so curious of what happened. Was it the contract negotiated? Did everything go wrong? Was he offended? Like, if he's turning down 8x8, I don't think the contract negotiation went that bad, because a guy who has 50 points or 60 points in the NHL shouldn't be turning down an 8x8 contract. So I'm just so curious to know like what had happened to sour the relationship and why he wanted out, because I don't think a guy who is hoping Tortorella's leaving or doesn't like Tortorella's buying a condo in the city and just saying, I'm going to live here. I'm going to purchase something here. Like, if he knew he wanted out by then, I'm guessing he didn't do that. So I just don't understand what had happened. I was wondering what your thought on that was.
Yeah, like just you mean the speed of it? How
Yeah.
like it all came on fast to me. I didn't know, honestly, truthfully, I didn't really catch on to it at the start either. I didn't know this was happening until about a week ago. And it just until we get the truth, to me it's just going to chalk up to immaturity. I'm sure something happened, and maybe something happened that was groundbreaking, and I'll eat my words, or I'll throw an apology out there to him. But as it stands right now, no one's came out and said anything. Kekalainen said when they went through contract negotiations during that 8x8 deals, everything was fine, right? There was like, he said, we never had any ill will towards each other. Then we hit the 2x5, and that was fine too. Like there was never any controversy. It didn't seem. So until I know what actually happened, I don't want to comment on. I'm not going to just guess.
Well, speaking of finding out the truth, Mike Babcock came out and had an interview with Pierre LeBrun, and he discussed the Mitchell Marner incident and a few other things. And as anybody knows, Mike Babcock was fired from the Toronto Maple Leafs last season. Some things came out, some incidents, and then a lot of former players stepped up and started talking about how they were mistreated by him and how he is not so good of a guy. A big thing with him is that he recently has started as an analyst at MSNBC. He's going to be in talk show on air, and he's saying that he isn't looking forward to coaching anytime soon, but there seems to be the kind of media push to bring him back in a better light, and maybe he'll be a coach in the NHL in the next few years. So I was kind of curious your opinion on Babs and what you're thinking.
So quickly, when he was in Detroit, I put a lot, when I was younger, obviously, I thought he was the best coach in the league, because that's what a lot of people I think were led to believe, because when they were that dynasty. But now when you look back on it and you hear all these stories from guys that were on those teams, and then what happens in Toronto, you're like, okay, maybe they could have won more. Maybe he was holding them back, if anything. And I think it was polar opposites with him in Toronto. It's hard for him with the young guys. It wasn't going to work. But then you hear out kind of how it didn't work with this Marner situation. And if you guys don't know, he ended up bringing Marner in and had him rate his own work ethic along with every other one on the team, their work ethic, and categorize where he fits. So that was just supposed to be an anonymous thing just between the two of them. And then he says he calls in a vet, and then the veteran comes in and sees Marner's list and where all of all the teammates are ranked on that. So you come in, right? If we make a list and I rank you at the bottom, and you're Marner, a young guy on the team, like you're just creating so much tension in the room between that. So on the NBC, he came out and said that he wanted to settle it in-house and apologize and all that. But at the end of the day, that's just kind of saving his ass. I think you can't do that kind of stuff. He just talks it up like, oh, I just made a mistake, and that's fine. But if that's something that he's openly coming out to talk about, then just think about maybe the possible skeletons that are much, much worse than that.
Yeah, the thing about it is, like, I saw a lot of people were mad at Pierre LeBrun and calling it a puff piece, and basically you're just boosting his reputation and everything like that. But for me, I kind of agree with them. Like, he didn't ask him any of the tough questions. I understand it's a reporter's job that you're supposed to like Babcock isn't going to do the interview if you're asking a bunch of tough questions. He's going to deny you and stuff. So you have to ask him certain things. But he only asked him about the Marner incident, and he didn't challenge him on anything. Okay, because Babcock comes out and says, "Hey, as soon as I did it, I went and apologized. I told Mitch, I was like, I screwed you. How do I fix it? Blah blah blah." And there was a bunch of reports from the Toronto dressing room and guys there that he came into the locker room and he posted the list in the locker room and stuff like that. So that's two different stories. Obviously, you don't know who to believe and it's conjecture, but him just coming out, and that's the one incident. Like Johan Franzen had to go to therapy for like military veterans after dealing with Babcock for so many years in Detroit. And like you were saying, that team in Detroit could have been a dynasty. I think he wasn't there for the early wins. I don't think he was head coach. I'm pretty sure he only had the one cup win with them in 2008. And he rode the Olympic gold medals to become the best coach in the NHL. But I'm not a big proponent of canceling somebody over their past actions or anything. I believe people can change. I believe all that. But personally, if I'm the owner of an NHL team or I'm the GM, I'm not hiring this guy. All of his okay, so Mike Keenan is one of those hardline coaches. You think of the hardline coach in the NHL, you think of Babcock, old guys like Mike Keenan, like John Tortorella. These guys are tough on their players. I think Torts has changed a lot, but Mike Keenan will say, like, people will come out and be like, you know what? He was, I don't know, I want to swear here, but it's not so pretty things. They'll say some not so pretty things, but say, hey, he was one of the best coaches I ever had. He got the most out of me. Nobody says that about Babcock. No guy I haven't seen anybody. Okay, wait, like, where's Datsuk coming out and say, wow, Babcock was a great coach. I was so happy playing under him. He got the most of me. Doesn't say that. Has Lindstrom come out? I haven't seen anything about him coming out and defending Babcock and all this. Nobody does. And I think that shows the level of what side this guy's on. If your players aren't happy coming to work, they're not happy playing for him, I don't see why they would hire him. I understand him being an analyst. He's a controversial figure. People like to watch. It's going to be interesting. I understand it for his reputation. He's trying to get back into the NHL. He wants to, be seen, all that stuff. If I was an owner or a GM, I just wouldn't hire him. I just look at the track record. I look what he's done to guys. I listen to what players have to say about him. I don't care if you won a cup and Olympic gold. If I don't think you can deal with people in 2020 or 2021, I don't think you can. And especially the younger guys. Like you said, it didn't work in Toronto because the guys are younger. People are changing now. I think it was a big thing with Laine, where people were like, we don't know how to treat some of these younger players that come in. They're a little more immature. I don't think Babcock's going to know how to deal with that. So.
Yeah, that's spot on. You hit the nail on the head there. And this, for anyone that's not too sure on Babcock, this isn't a one-time thing. It's not like you said about Franzen, but it's not like he was all without clean before and everyone loved him. Guy by the name of Mike Modano played with him and ended up retiring there. And this is one of my first Babcock story that I heard. You got a guy that, right, is arguably before Kane the best American hockey player. Right?
He's the all-time leader in points in the NHL for an American-born player. He is, before Kane came in, he was the best American player of all time.
And he finished his career in Detroit with 1,499 career games. Okay. And he played in Detroit, and he was at the end of his career, right? Of course, but they were already in the playoffs, already clinched. Last 3 games of the season didn't matter. And he scratched them for 3 straight games, so he couldn't hit the 1,500 mark. So I wasn't old enough to know the hype around it at the time, but since I've dug into it in the past, there was no reasoning behind it, and no one has ever came out and gave any explanation other than that's just the kind of guy you're dealing with here, to do that. So, I mean, I agree with you. I wouldn't take a shot at him. I wouldn't want to see him back in the NHL just because I think his time's passed.
All I'm saying is if I have 1,499 games and I have a broken leg, you're going to get me on that ice so that I can get 1,500. I can't even believe it. But I guess from things I can't believe, let's go on to the next one. The Washington Capitals got an $100,000 team fine for 4 players hanging out in a hotel room. The 4 players were the Russians, Ilya Samsonov, the goalie, Alex Ovechkin, of course, Evgeny Kuznetsov, and Dmitry Orlov. I was wondering your thoughts on this. We had wives come out and talk. We've had anchors told wives to go shut up. There's been a lot surrounding this story. Players have missed, each has to miss 4 games. I'm really curious to know what you're thinking. I personally think they were trying to set a precedent. They came down hard on them. I didn't agree with it though. That's my thoughts.
So for me, yeah, we're gonna have a little bit of a disagreement here. I think the guys knew the rule, right? And within COVID, it's everyone's lucky to be playing. We're very lucky in Nova Scotia right now. COVID's not as pressing as an issue as it is in the States, right? We have more freedom. Down there, they don't. Like, in order to play these games, they need to be in lockdown. They need to be in isolation at all times in the hotels. Like, it has to be shut down or the league can't run. So the players know the rules, yet they still went out and broke it. And I think the rule itself is terrible, and it's just silly because you can have everyone on the bus, right? Everyone in the dressing room, everyone on the bench, no masks, all teammates playing games. You have player lounges often in the hotels where everyone's allowed to go to, but you can't be in anyone else's room other than your own. So that isn't the issue that I'm arguing right now, because I disagree with that rule 100%. They should have freedom. You have a blocked off hotel floor. You should be free to roam, right, with your team. But they knew the rule and they still went out and broke it. So that is just absolutely unacceptable to me, because you know how strict it is in the league. You're lucky to be playing and you still go out and break the rule. Like, it was unacceptable. You can't do that.
See, like we disagree, but we also agree. I do agree that it's the rule and they should understand it. But I agree that they should have fought the rule when it was being made, and that should have been the thing rather than breaking it. At the same time, I think the rule is stupid. I think it's plain out stupid. I think I'm actually okay with the fine to the team, the $100,000 fine. Like, I think it should be issued to the team, and it's a team thing. I think that's fine. I think 2 of the 4 players have antibodies for COVID-19 and for the strain that's out right now. I'm no medical expert. No, everybody can tell, but those guys both tested negative after being in that room. I don't understand why those guys shouldn't be able to play. From my understanding right now, they both tested negative. They already have the antibodies. You're making Dmitry Orlov miss games after a 416 game Ironman streak. That's over 6 years in the NHL. You're missing Ovi, one of your biggest stars in the league, make him miss games. He has to come out and have a public apology that sounds the most written and fake apology I've ever seen in my life. Ilya Samsonov actually tested positive from what I understand. So, like, him sitting out, completely understand, totally get it. Kuznetsov doesn't have antibodies in the room. Totally get him having to, sit out, figure everything out. I totally respect that. But my thoughts on this is, like you said, they sit together on the bus. They're on the bench. 2 of them are line mates on the bench that talk with no mask. They hug each other after goals, everything like that. If you can do that, but you can't hang in the hotel room, like, I understand nobody wants to feel bad for NHL players. They make so much money. Nobody wants to feel bad for an NHL player. Like, they're getting $100,000 to play hockey. Like, who feels bad for these guys? I honestly do feel a little bit bad for some of these Russian guys right now. They're not in their home country. They're living in hotels and on the road and everything. You're getting to see your family a lot less. And when you're on the road, you can't spend time with your teammates now in the hotel room. You get back to the hotel after a game, you're not allowed to, like, go places. You're basically confined, a little bit of a prisoner on the road, and you can talk on, like we're doing on Zoom, or you're on FaceTime, anything like that. But people know it's not the same. And these guys are used to a different lifestyle, and you want to spend time and interact with people. You're an NHL player. You're used to that life. Also, these guys are away from home, man. Like, they're the Russian guys. They don't walk in around. They don't have a lot of people they can interact with in their native language. Like, if you go to the grocery store and they're buying stuff, they can't speak Russian. They don't get to do their thing. So I think I understand why it's the 4 Russians. They're all hanging with each other. They want to speak their language. They want to hang out with their guys. I just think that the 4 games sitting out, if the guys test negative, I don't see why they which should have to sit out. I think the rule is a little stupid in my opinion. That's my stance, but
Yeah, and I agree. I think once they're healthy and they're able to play, I wouldn't go as deep into the antibody thing just because. And maybe in a perfect world, you should allow that, and everyone should be tested. And if you're at risk and you're not at risk, then it's the amount of restrictions you get to follow. But the world that we're in right now, and unprecedented times, um, everyone just has to be an equal, and everyone has to be treated the same in order for everything to work just more smoothly. But I agree, if you're not at a risk, you shouldn't have to wait for extra precautions. At the end of the day, though, that $100,000 fine, if I'm the owner of Washington, I think I'm going to ask each one of them to give me $25,000 because that there's no issue. And I understand what you're saying about the Russian thing. Like, and that's why I feel bad for the guys not having like time to spend together and speak their native language, like you said. But that should, like you said, it should have been an issue when they made the rules and said, can we book another floor of the hotel room where guys can hang out? Can we separate even more? Can we have rooms? But they didn't. And then they went through the first couple road trips and it was fine. And now they're like, yeah, we'll break the rules. That's fine. It's no big deal. No, it's a huge deal, right? You didn't fight it. They're trying to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. And at a professional level like this, you can't do that. So they're in the wrong.
yeah, that's why I was saying is the NHL set a precedent on this. They said, hey, we have arguably 4 of the 5 best players on your team are going to sit out for 4 games each. They're all going to miss them. It's a competitive division. And they said, and $100,000 fine to the team. That's a precedent set. They came down hard on these guys because they don't want it to happen again. Now I want to move on to their biggest rival, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Jim Rutherford steps down today due to personal reasons. I just want to talk about his tenure. I mean, in my opinion, he's one of the most controversial GMs in the league for his tenure because he'll make some bonehead trades that will never pan out. Then he'll have some okay deals, and then he'll go win 2 cups back to back. So, Jim Rutherford.
Yeah, so you might have to hit this one with some of the trades. I was as you started the sentence, I was trying to think of things, but overall, I know the controversy that comes around with him, and he's been in a situation where it's like he's like, what are you doing? Why like the highs and the lows, I guess, like you said, but he's been there at the helm for Pittsburgh's. Not their entire. When did he get there? 14, I believe.
I'm not entirely sure.
I think he was in Carolina until 14, so it started in 14 maybe. But he had those 2 cups, and I understand he was kind of taking over a team that was good through the whole Crosby era, but he hasn't hurt them at all. Like he's done very exceptional things there, and yeah, I mean, it's just praise the guy for it, and hopefully everything's okay, and for the reasons that he dropped out, I would say.
Yeah, I'm obviously wishing him all the best. I hope everything's okay. But like looking back on some of his trades, like even the one for Kasperi Kapanen now, obviously we've only seen a few games of him in a Pittsburgh Penguins uniform, but that's a weird trade for me. Like I look at they already gave, so they had a conditional first round pick in the Jason Zucker trade last year that if it was top 15, Pittsburgh could choose to keep it. So it was 15th overall. So Pittsburgh chose, hey, we're going to keep it. And then they used that pick they kept trading for Kasperi Kapanen, which means that Zucker's, this year's first round pick, their 2021, is Minnesota's already. And then they gave up their last one for Kapanen. So you just gave up first round picks for Zucker and Kapanen in those deals. I know they're part of a bit of larger deals, but he's been a guy known to trade a guy like Phil Kessel and barely get anything in return, but then he'll go deal a 6th round pick for John Marino. Like he'll find diamonds in the rough and he'll make little good trades. And then he'll also trade away a star or something and have nothing to show for it. Like this summer, he was trying to trade Evgeny Malkin. And from what I understand, it was Crosby kind of shut down that deal a bit. But I just think that he took a lot of flack because he's in the big market in Pittsburgh. But like you said, he won 2 cups. Like not many. I think David Boyle, he's GM. He's been in the league for 21 or 22 years now. Hasn't won a cup. So for a guy like Jim Rutherford who has 2 under his belt, great career. Obviously, we hope to see him back someday. If not, hope all is well.
He has 3 cups, doesn't he? He won that one in Carolina. He won in Carolina.
Was he there in 2007?
Yeah, was that his first year? First year there, maybe?
I didn't know that. That's pretty awesome.
I do believe. Fact check me.
I'll fact check you after. We'll come back next one. We'll have the Cam is wrong counter, or or it could be I'm wrong counter.
Yeah, I do. I something tells me he was there then, but yeah. Well, time will tell. We'll check the facts for the next episode.
Well, I also want to talk. There are 2 defensemen on the trade block right now. So everybody knew the Keith Yandel story and how he was on the block. I believe the Philadelphia Flyers are the front runner for them. I'm personally a Flyers fan. I understand the deal to a certain extent. He had a good start to the season, the whole Ironman streak. I think the Flyers need a number 1 power play defenseman. Ivan Provorov is a fantastic defenseman. He scores goals, but he's not a power play quarterback. Yandel can be that. I don't personally like Yandel's cap hit, and I think it has terms, so I wouldn't want to take that on necessarily. I think that, you try and find a different option where you're not giving a guy, I think he has 3 years remaining, maybe 4. I don't really want to take on that. But I'm curious to see if a deal happens with him because I don't know what would be in return. I think I heard Shane Gostisbehere going the other way. He has had a tough couple of years. He was fantastic in his rookie season. He was really good in 17-18. And the last 2 seasons, it just hasn't worked. And with Matt Niskanen retiring this year, I was hoping he would step in. He goes and catches COVID, hasn't been able to play really. I think he played his first game last night against the Devils. And I heard he didn't look good. So, if you're dealing him and he hasn't been good and you're getting Yandel, then I guess I can't understand that. I was wondering what you're thinking here.
Yeah, I mean, you summarized it pretty good there. I think Yandel, for me, is still an impactful guy, right? I think I agree. Who knows how long that's going to be, but he still gives you points and he still definitely gives you that locker room leadership and everything. Because when everything was first going on about him being a scratch and missing out, I heard a story, he was talking with management. It was either the coaching staff or management. And they were saying, that we don't like this. We don't like this. This is why it's not going to happen. And then one of them said, and people are saying that you're a bad teammate. And it didn't sit with him. He said he got emotional and he was just really torn up about it. And it ended up, they took it back and they said that wasn't true. They just ended up, I don't know, trying to just add gasoline to the fire, I guess. But so I think wherever he goes, if he gives you a couple good seasons, he's the kind of guy that really boosts morale in the locker room. Everyone talks about being like one of the funniest players in the NHL, like a longtime vet. And I think he just really positive impact on the locker room side of things. So I'd like to see it. What you said about Ghost is spot on. I mean, who's heard his name in the past 3 years, right? Last year being a 7th defenseman on the team for a little bit while when he was still healthy. So if that's the deal that they want to make or they could make, I think the Flyers will win that deal just because Ghost's time has ran out. Who's the second D that you want to talk about there?
The second D is Vince Dunn. I went first on the last one, so I'll let you go first on Vince Dunn.
When Vince Dunn came into the league, was it 17, 18 maybe? I remember he was running their second power play unit in like the first handful to 12 games into his career. And he looked really, really good doing it. Like I loved this guy. I thought this guy was under Pietrangelo was the guy in St. Louis, right? And when he leaves, I thought he'd turn in to kind of be the guy. And you bring in Krug, these guys are set. And now you see that he's a healthy scratch and he's on the trade block and they want him out. So don't know what happened. I don't think he's done. Bad choice of words. I don't think his career's done, but he, wherever he goes, I think he could still turn it back up. So if you can make a deal for something and make you right now, his value is very low because they don't see him as high value. But if he can play like the player he did a couple years ago, then he's very impactful. So, I mean, that'd be one trade that I don't think you're going to get as a Flyers fan, but you give Gostisbehere up for Dunn. You might have to throw something else in there or a lot else in there, but.
So I actually read a report today that it was basically saying, why wouldn't the Flyers take a run at Vince Dunn? But to comment on what you were saying about him is I completely agree. He came into the league. I didn't know who he was. And I actually just was watching St. Louis one night and I was like, holy crap, like this Vince Dunn guy, he can play. And they go and they win the cup the following year. And he was fantastic. I thought he's awesome. He's a smaller guy, but he's not afraid to hit. He steps up and plays. And I think that was one of the things he got benched for, I think last game, is because he tried to step up for a big hit and he got walked and the other team scored. But I really do see a D that's good puck moving defenseman. He might be a smaller guy, but he's not afraid to throw his body into play. Like he's a little chippy. He's a little angry. I think he can play in a top four. Like you said, he's not the guy behind Pietrangelo. He's not going to be in your top two. He's not in your top pairing guy. But if you're on a team and you're looking at this guy's 24, he's got, I think, over 260 games of NHL experience or 250 games, somewhere in that range. I'm not sure. You're saying that many games played at 24 is just, that's an accomplishment already. Never mind he's won a Stanley Cup. Never mind the fact that he might have slipped out this year, but he's a guy only on 1 year deal. He's still an RFA, so you can sign him after this year if he has a tougher year and you sign him low. He's only a $1.875 million contract for one season right now. And he's got all these tools, and I think he can be a top four defenseman in a lot of teams. So I think that I'm curious to see what it would look like to make that deal happen, because I do think that St. Louis probably undervalues him right now, but I think they probably realize, even if he's not playing well, the value that other teams can see him at. Because like he didn't have a great time in the bubble, from my understanding. Comes has a tough start to the year, so that's 2 bad looks in a row. But everything before that along the line, he's a great defenseman. So how much do you judge the bubble, which was a crazy thing that not many players adjusted well to, the whole Washington Capitals team per se, and right now the start of a shortened season in the middle of January. So I don't think through 8 games I would devalue him too much. I think that some teams definitely will take a look at him. I think that whatever team does, I think they're going to be happy. That's my thoughts. But
yeah, for sure. Like you said, still so young and a lot of promise there. So and a great guy to have in this conversation is Gostisbehere, where there's still, I wouldn't say anymore, but there was still hope with him after 3 bad seasons. Right. Yeah. So, and you're an unsure. These are tough, really tough to judge guys right now, because it's like shortened season, weird start, came from the bubble, a lot of variable thrown around. So unless he plays 2 more years in St. Louis and does absolutely nothing, or gets traded and does nothing, I don't see this as a major issue for the guy. So I think if anyone gets a stab at him, I'd really look for it to be a huge impactful trade.
Yeah, I think both of those guys you talk about, Gostisbehere and Dunn, they're both primed. If they ended up in Seattle on an expansion team and a fresh start and they get on the power play, like they'll make a team look stupid. Like even if they're not succeeding with their team, they'll find a way. I think those are 2 of those kind of guys. But moving on, I want to bring up that we had discussed in our Art Ross choices and our predictions that we thought the Art Ross would go to somebody in the Canadian division because we thought that division had some of the more weaker defense cores and high flying offenses in the league. Currently, 6 of the top 8 in the league in points are in the North or the Canadian division. I was wondering, are you surprised? I guess we predicted it, but are you surprised?
Have you watched any of those games? Like you don't have bad goaltending, but they're just shootouts, right? One great example is the Montreal going up and playing in the Vancouver series. They score 11 the first day, 10 the next day, and then 7 the game after that, right? And total goals. Winnipeg is, like I said, high flying, scoring a bunch. They've all just been, if no matter what, you're seeing 6 to 7 goals in every game that you watch in that division, and you'll continue to. So, I mean, it's definitely exciting hockey to watch. The opposite, I would say, right now to the East Division with the Metro, besides when the Flyers are having a bad game. But I think that kind of was our prediction. There are no surprises in this. Maybe the magnitude of how many goals are being scored, but everyone thought there was going to be a lot of goals. There has been a lot of goals. In the East, it's the opposite. People thought there'd be less goals, and they have been playing relatively defensively strong. So, yeah, hopefully it continues that way. It's definitely fun hockey to watch.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you. The only thing I'll say is the East Division's still fun to me because there's been 9 games that have gone to overtime or shootout, which they might not be scoring, but it's a tight-knit division right now, which always makes for interesting hockey. I think we're going to move on to your segment, your favorite. I'll let you take over here. I know it's all you.
Yeah, so back to our props and drops of episode 3. So we, if you didn't listen to the last episode, new segment on here. One in between episodes, our prop is our one player. Each person picks one player that exceeded expectations throughout the week. Someone that we've been proud of and has really done a good job to separate themselves. Our drop is the opposite. Someone that we, not necessarily the worst player, but someone that we just hold to much higher standard and haven't been impressed with them in the week in between episodes. So without further ado, if you want to start it off with your prop of the week.
All right. So my prop of the week goes to Mikko Rantanen. He has 6 goals in his last 6 games, and he scored in every single one of them. So that's a goal a game for the last 6 games. Any kind of streak like that, a guy's bringing it. I think he's playing great. I think he's opening up himself for passes, and I think, finding ways to score. So he's my props. I think I was disappointed a bit in his play last year. I know he's a guy who puts up numbers, but him starting the season and just finding a way to consistently score, I love it. So that's my props.
Sounds good. There was a lot of tough picks. We've been about a week in between episodes, so that's a long time. I'm gonna take a guy by the name of Joe Pavelski, and this is a Dallas team that I thought it was really important for them to come in and have an impact right away. Right, every other team you're playing around 7 games. You haven't played yet. You start with a 7-0 win. He has 4 points in that one. Come back the next night, he has 3. So he has 8 points in 3 games to start the season. Is that streak going to continue? Probably not. 7 of those 8 are on the power play. But I just think it's for them as a group to start off. And it's, like I said, exceeding expectations. That is exactly what they needed to come in. Because when you come in late, your biggest question is, can you score? Right? Because normally the goalies at the start, you can play defensive, but it's getting your scoring touch back and finding the back of the net. So for them to come in right away and do that, now sitting at 3-0, and I think he's a big reason for that. So
I think that's a great choice. I think he's been fantastic. I will say they scared me a little bit in their last game against Detroit there. It was a little scary, but I think they've been great. And now we will move on to the drops. So I went with Laffy last week, and he's still pointless. So I'm not going to go back and pick on him anymore. He's having a tough one. We mentioned Vince Dunn, him being potentially healthy scratch. He could have been my guy, but I'm going to opt for Elias Pettersson. And I know he just got his first goal within the last week, so maybe he shouldn't be on my list, but I watched him play against Montreal, and he was tripping over his own feet on the power play, turning it over, just not doing things that Elias Pettersson does. Like, he's usually the guy he's calm with the puck. He makes the right decision always. He has a great shot. He's smart. And he's just not playing that way. I don't understand. He's going through a thing with his agent. He has changed agents now and stuff. It's a contract year. Most guys play better in their contract years. I don't know if it's him worrying about that, but I thought he had a brutal week. Every game I watched him, I didn't think he had played well in really any of them. And he's got 2 points in 8 games in the season, and he's your first line center. So he's my drop. I need more out of him.
Absolutely. It's funny you mentioned Laffy, because that's when we got to cut the guy a little bit of slack. We can't hit him twice, even though you kind of want to, because like you said last week, you're not really seeing stuff. But I'm going to take a guy a little bit off the table, John Marino, with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's not a big stat guy, so I don't care that he doesn't have any points, but he's 5 games, -7 games, -6 right now. And he's playing 25 minutes. But when I watch them, I've been lucky enough to watch them a couple times, he just hasn't really looked good. And if he was still on his $1.8 or $1.7 million contract, that's fine. This is a guy you just signed in the offseason for, correct me if I'm wrong, 6 years at 4.4. 6 years at 4. Yeah. So after playing 57 career NHL games. So we talked about that then. I said that maybe it's a great deal. Maybe he'll turn out and be their number one defenseman in the future. But what if he doesn't? He's played 57 games. He has 20 career points. Where's that money and in that term? So for him to start this way and he's still playing lots of minutes, and maybe they're happy with him. I watched him and I didn't he just looked sloppy out there. So I'd like to see more after just getting paid some big money.
Yeah, so this is maybe why you don't sign a guy for 6 years after 57 games played and then retire from being a GM. My thing on that is I agree with you. I thought I watched Marino, and he's usually so, calm and focused with the puck. He's a good outlet pass guy. I never think he's been the best defensively. I think he's a good power play guy in ozone. I want more out of him. I want a lot more. I will say my only defense for him, I think he's a great pick for a drop, but I also don't think their goaltending behind him has been good. I thought DeSmith has been well, but I thought Jari has been really bad for the Penguins lately. So obviously he's not helping the goalie. If I think Jari is playing bad, he's getting quality shots on him because Marino in front of him is playing 25 minutes and not getting it done. So I think it's a good pick. I think it's a solid pick. Hopefully he picks it up because the Pittsburgh Penguins need that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we send it off on this episode, we went over last week on some playoff predictions, and I think I was going to eat my words, but I need to throw out an apology to the Boston Bruins, because I came out and I left them off my list, and I said their offense scares me a little bit, and I said just without Pasternak, and I didn't know if they'd be able to get it going, and maybe a bold take, maybe an idiotic take by me, but I thought this would be the year that their dynasty comes to an end. They plummet, right? They just stop. Since those words left my mouth, they have been fantastic. I think watching them play, they're having 48, 50 shots a night, putting up huge numbers, just dominating your Flyers in those 2 games, just looking really good doing it. So I got to eat my words on that one and just say that's as a Habs fan, it hurts to say it, but I apologize to the Boston Bruins.
See, what I love about this is that I get the opportunity to hopefully watch you eat your words twice. Because now if they slip, Tuukka Rask got hurt last night, didn't practice today, and Jake DeBrusk got hurt and didn't practice today. So now you're down Rask and DeBrusk. If they start losing, I can't wait to see you eat your words twice just for coming after the Flyers like that.
Well, if they start losing, then I'm just this was just a ploy, and I always knew that, because on my picks, I can't change my picks. I am saying right now that my picks don't look good. All right, we've had some feedback on picks. Early front runner looking like you. I think my boys will figure it out in the end, and hopefully the Bruins, nothing would make me happier than see the Bruins slide. But where we're at right now, since I've said that, they've looked very, very good, and they just deserved a little bit of credit. Now, who's also looked very good are the Montreal Canadiens. I had to throw that in there too. What are your thoughts on Montreal going on the West Coast road trip? Right, starting, they're the first team since the 74-75 Kings to play 6 road games to start a season and not have a loss.
Well, what is there to say other than they've been fantastic? They added some guys in the offseason. Those guys have brought it to Foley, Anderson. They've both played great. Suzuki, like we were hoping, okay, we saw him in the bubble. Is he going to be a star, or is he going to go back to being a second line center? He's a star. He's playing phenomenal. He's walking guys. People are saying he's the next Patrice Bergeron. I don't know if he's at that level defensively for me, but I think he has a lot more offensive flair. He has the ability to not only like carry the puck, but he can drive the play in a way that Bergeron doesn't. I think Suzuki's a special player. I think right now they're rolling their special team. My only thing on them that I'll go against them a little bit is that they always dominate Vancouver, right? So there's a big thing right now that they're undefeated in regulation. They're doing great. I think I can't quite exactly remember the stat, but from going back like 2 or 3 years, they're about 13-0-2 against Vancouver. Like they haven't lost. It's just one of those teams. Doesn't matter at home or on the road. They have Vancouver's number. They've played 3 games against them and swamped them every single time. And everybody's saying they're going to win the cup now. Do I think that they're playing great in the Canadian division? Yes. Do I think that they right now look like they should win that division? Oh my God, yes. But we're less than 10 games in the season. And I still think as much as those Canadian teams are good, none of my picks to be going far or like a power rankings of the league, I don't think the Canadian teams are that. I think it's one of the weaker divisions. I think it has a bunch of good teams, but I don't know if any of those teams are truly great. So for me, I want to pump the brakes a little bit on the Montreal Canadiens. I think they're good. I think they're rolling. I like it. I don't know. We're giving them, people are saying they're bringing the cup home to Quebec. I don't know about that.
I'm definitely not saying that. I am not, we're not turning into Leaf fans here, right? We're not starting to plan the parade yet. I just wanted to ask, I saw something today actually was cup odds, and they had the on like percentages, like likelihood to win. The Lightning at 6.8% and the Habs at 6.3%. And then the next closest team at like 5.2. So I don't know who wrote that up because, like you said, very early, and that's not what I'm trying to put across right now. I thought that was insane. But they're very fun to watch right now is I think the biggest thing for us. I love the fact that they're winning, but those games are enjoyable. When's the last time you watch a Habs game and see 11 goals if they weren't losing 9-2?
Never.
Right? So that's awesome. And I think I agree with you on that division. It's might be a little bit more, it's just more sloppy hockey because there's going to be a lot more high scoring games. But yeah, overall, that's week two in the books, and hopefully the rest of the season goes on smoothly. That's about all we have for our third episode of the One-Timers Podcast. Leave any comments or questions or concerns in the comment section. Enjoy.
Thanks, guys.